I always ask that only because, well, no, I always ask that because when public radio is here.
The voice wasn't ominous enough.
You think? I want to thank the New Media Group and Will Robinson and Scott Kozar who put that together, and our campaign manager, Andrew Fries, and our communications director, Matthew Kane, who worked really hard. Again, we're 2 weeks in, and the important thing about this race is that people have not crystallized on this, other than certain base voters. It's important to understand that with that amount of undecided and that amount of voter volatility, that it's impossible to predict how this is going to turn out. For those of us who have been around for a long time, we've had experiences with these things where things changed in the last 2 weeks. Some of you might remember the Ron polling. Some of you might remember some of the casino polling that showed casinos way up and wound up way down. The good news for us is that we're on TV as of today. We're on until the end of the election. They have spent millions of dollars of lobbyist money trying to protect the existing system, even though they claim they're not, but that's what they've done. And they haven't moved anywhere in the polls. And some polls show us actually moving closer even with their money spent. So we are optimistic that with the launch of this television ad and the fact that we're going to be able to go toe-to-toe with these folks, that the next 2 weeks are going to show and yield a victory for the voters of Ohio and for Voters First.
And you guys were laughing about more political ads. This was shot from the point of view of inside a waitress's head, and the videotape is from the 49er Diner in Slavic Village in Cleveland. And it was intentionally designed to not look like a political ad. It's an emotional ad, and I think this is an election that's really about the people versus the politicians, and that's what this is designed to do. And when it was tested, people looked at it and said, wow, somebody's finally getting it. You know, that we are ignored, and the lobbyists and the special interest groups are the people who seem to get the attention of the politicians.
So there's two things about this, and by the way, Sandy would be up here with me, but obviously circumstances dictate that it's easier for her to do this that way.
I get my walking cast.
That's right. I think it's important that you understand that we're trying to cut through with this sort of diner kind of experience from the view of a waitress, because everything is so nasty right now on television. You need to find something to cut through. I do think that we're talking about things that people are already frustrated over in the political system, but we're changing the tone and the discussion, which we weren't able to do until we were able to go up on the air. We're shifting that back to what it really is, which is these districts and this current system do not work. And this is the way that you can change the way it works. And less weedy, less having all these discussions about politicians arguing with politicians over what the best way to reform is, and more of a reminder to people that you have a way to fix this, and this is your opportunity. And taking back into the voters' frame of mind. So.
And we found that when we tell people what's actually in Issue 2, what it would do, that they're for us when they read that ballot language that I think is intentionally confusing. They have no idea what it would do. And we know we have an uphill fight because we are the yes side, and when people are confused, they vote no.
So we're up on the air, we're toe-to-toe, they haven't moved, and we are very hopeful that things are going in the right direction. One last thing, obviously there are certain groups that are supporting us, and many of those groups have been working separately on early vote turnout, especially C4 groups and some of the political party groups. You might note that some of the early voting numbers that are coming in are early vote numbers coming in from demographics that are supportive of this Voters First initiative. And so, on top of the fact that we haven't been able to go toe-to-toe, we're very hopeful that the fact that there's a disproportionate number of progressive voters that are actually voting early, and that has been shown on a countywide basis, puts us in a position of strength actually right now going into the final 2 weeks.
Brian, why the ad doesn't mention redistricting maps or anything actually related directly to the issue? Why is that?
Two reasons. One, I think we needed to change the scope of this into talking about where voters' minds are at after being saturated from, you know, all these PAC ads and candidate ads. I think that voters' mindset is we want reform, we want change, and we're really sick of what we're seeing on television. That's the first thing. The second thing is it's complicated, and you got 30 seconds to be able to tell the story. Now, having said that, we will have you here tomorrow. We're not moving away from that at all, to unveil some tool that we're going to use both with social media and earned media, as well as getting it around to different sections of the state where people are going to be able to see for themselves how awful these districts are and how unfair and uncompetitive these districts are as they currently are. But you have to do that through a different medium. It's just too hard to do this in 30 seconds.
And I think part of that's been a regional campaign. One of the things that we did, we had some press conferences up in Northeast Ohio, and we showed people that when the people in the bunker wanted to change the Renaissance district and make sure the Timken headquarters were in there, it took 13 minutes to make that change. You know, I covered politics for a long time. You guys did too. You ever seen them move that quickly for just a normal mortal, an average voter? And we have examples like that all over the state that really are resonating with people. And I think the shape of the districts and the reasons why they did what they did are some of our better arguments. So we've got the specifics and then we've got the emotion, and I think if you look at them all together, it's effective.
I called what Sandy just talked about, the 13-minute gap, the bunker buster. They were able to get that done in a hurry.
The other side's been running ads for more than a month. Why is it taking you guys so long?
Well, you have to raise resources. The other side has a lot of resources for two different reasons, I would say. One is there are entrenched interests that want safe seats because of the lobbying influence that you can have through the safe seat process. And the second one, quite frankly, is that this attracted national attention and national money because one of our congressmen in a very safe seat happens to be the U.S. Speaker of the House. And John Boehner wants to have safe seats. He likes this system. It's the good old boy political system that John Boehner set up. His advisors were very active in the bunker. Many of you saw in the emails, Tom Watman, one of his key advisors, was continually mentioned in that effort. And so they've been able to raise a lot of money very quickly from corporate interests and other interests that we'll be able to maybe see in their reports. Who knows how they're funding it, whether that's going to be something we can see. But we're going up against some powerful people. The key thing is, in all of these polls, they haven't moved. They've spent millions of dollars and haven't moved anywhere. And so if I would have, was I worried 3 or 4 weeks ago that we were going to be so far behind by the time we were able to go toe-to-toe on the air that we would be in trouble? I was, but when I woke up this morning, first of all, there was a poll last week that showed us only 7 points down. I think there's some others that show us and almost at the same spot that they were when they started airing their ads. So if they spent millions of dollars and gone nowhere, and there are these levels of undecided voters, then you compound that with the fact that many of our supporters and our supporting organizations are pushing out this early vote, and progressive voters seem to be outnumbering others on early vote. I actually think we're in a strong position, much stronger than I would have thought of 4 weeks ago.
One of the other things that we're talking about regionally is for almost 50 years, one party has been promoting reform and the other party's been saying, I'm for reform, just not this reform. It's flawed, it's too prescriptive, it's too partisan, it's ineffective. We've been hearing the same thing for almost 50 years. And I think it's clear to the voters that neither party can be trusted to fix the system alone. And, you know, you guys are new. Wait till you stick around in Ohio for a long time. You'll be as disgusted as Mike Curtin and I. People have had it. We are an evenly divided state in terms of registered Democrats and registered Republicans. And whatever the party out of power is, they just don't feel like they have a voice anymore. And I think there's a lot of Republicans, particularly women, who don't feel like they have a voice either. And the frustration is so high, I think we have a good opportunity to tap into that frustration as well as that mindset for reform.
You keep saying that even with like a month of barrage of ads that there hasn't been any real change in the polls. What makes you think that this ad will have any change in the polls either?
Well, that's one of the reasons we changed the tone of it. If you noticed, our tone is really from the point of view of a voter, somebody that's pretty much, look, this sort of entrenchment is what has allowed our politics to get out of control. It's what makes politicians move to the right because their only real election is in a primary. So you got to move farther to the right, and then by the time you run for office, you're so extreme that it's hard to get back over. So what we were trying to do is show in this ad and contrast it with some of the nastiness that's going on in the last 2 weeks to show people, hey, look, there is an alternative to restore competitiveness and sort of change the tone of what's happening in politics through real competitive elections, real discussion, and less lobbyist influence. And that's what we were trying to get across through this ad.